Thousands of ballots remain uncounted in Georgia, one of the 3 remaining toss-up states that could determine the fate of the election. With 16 electoral votes at stake, the state remains too close to call. President Trump is currently leading Democratic nominee Joe Biden by less than 1% of the vote. For more on this now, we want to bring in Mark Strassman. Mark is in Atlanta. Do we have Mark? We do have Mark. Okay, Mark, I wasn't sure if you were up. There you are. I hear you. Okay, so Mark, you're in the thick of things. Where does ballot counting currently stand, and when can we expect to hear some results?
All good questions. So let me see if I can walk you through it here. So it's nail-biting time for the Trump campaign here. When President Trump got up yesterday morning, he was 118,000 votes ahead in Georgia. Woke up this morning, he's 18,000 votes ahead. His lead has steadily crumbled, and here's why. There have been tens of thousands of outstanding, uncounted ballots here in the state of Georgia, most of them from Metro Atlanta. These are primarily a handful of counties with changing demographics. They are younger, they are more diverse, they are much more receptive to a Democratic candidate, whereas in the past they were almost uniformly Republican. As these ballots, uncounted ballots, have been counted, former Vice President Biden has needed to win essentially 2 of every 3 of these uncounted ballots to close the gap with the president. Over the last 48 hours, he is doing that. And so, as I said, yesterday the gap was 118. Today the gap is 18 with 61,000 uncounted ballots left to go. So over the course of the day, if the current trends hold, we will see this gap continue to shrink. Here's what else is significant. In Georgia, a recount happens with when the margin is less than 0.5%. In this race, that gap would be about 25,000. We're at 18,000 now. We're within the margin of a potential recount, and the Secretary of State's office told me yesterday they fully expect a recount to happen. So this election in Georgia isn't over by a long shot.
Mark, so where are these outstanding votes coming from, I guess, is the first question. And we are expecting in the next half hour or so to hear from the Secretary of State. Could we get results then? Because I understand that it could happen before the end of today, before close of business, that Georgia would finish their count.
Okay, in order, where are these votes coming from? They're essentially absentee ballots. Absentee ballots are a little more time-consuming. They're paper ballots. You have to open them. They're a 2-page document. You have to make sure that they've been properly filled out. So they have to be processed, and then they have to be taken to a separate location and be tabulated. All takes time. And so over the course of the last roughly 36, 48 hours, the big stack has become a smaller stack. And again, this involves a number of counties, but the vast majority of these absentee ballots are from a handful of the most populous counties in Georgia, which are the Metro Atlanta counties. So that's where the ballots come from. As far as when this is going to end, I think the majority of these ballots will be counted today. But I've heard, for instance, that one county here, Gwinnett County, may not be finished until tomorrow morning. I'm not sure they're all going to be counted, but it is also possible that enough ballots will be counted that, depending on what the margin is, we still may be able to project the state of Georgia for one candidate or another, depending how the rest of this day goes. But there's no question. The last day has been excellent news for the Biden campaign and nail-biting time for the Trump campaign. We'll have to see how the rest of these uncounted ballots play out.
That may be part of the reason why the Trump campaign has filed a lawsuit in Georgia, as well as some other states where the count is very tight. What more can you tell us about the lawsuit in Georgia, though?
Okay, so the lawsuit was filed against Chatham County, which is the Savannah, Georgia area. Essentially, the Trump campaign alleged irregularities. They claim they saw someone take a stack of 53 ballots and put them into another stack of uncounted ballots. They claimed in a press release that the Democrats were trying to steal the election. They want all the ballots that were received after 7 p.m. on Tuesday night put aside, and they want the voting put on pause. They're essentially again claiming that the Democrats are trying to steal it. They've also threatened to sue as many as a dozen counties in Georgia along the same lines. clearly they're unhappy with the way the trend line is going as these ballots are being counted and the president's gap is shrinking. We'll have to see how it goes. We haven't had a court weigh in on that yet, but when we do, of course, we'll bring it to you.
Yeah, and Mark, you already took us through the requirements for a possible recount. Now, I know that Georgia is different than Wisconsin, but Wisconsin officials, including the former governor, have suggested that generally when recounts happen, it doesn't really change the margins all that much, but maybe it's different in Georgia?
You know, it's a good question. I mean, Georgia has a new generation of machines that they're using for the first time here, and so I think to some degree, you know, all bets are off. I mean, you have to see, for instance, like how have these machines performed? I guess we'll find out with the recount, and then of course you have this whole separate stack of absentee ballots that have to be gone over again one by hand, and all of that's going to take some time too. I mean, people ask for a recount hoping, of course, that the margin will change. By and large, do the margins change significantly? Well, obviously, it depends on what the original margin was to begin with. But, you know, if you're this is a tight race in this state and a tight race nationally. And if you're on the losing end, you want to fight for every last vote, whether it's a vote in Georgia or an electoral college vote. And that's what both campaigns are going to be doing. Right now, it's the Trump campaign that is taking it more litigiously, but that could change too, depending how Georgia goes and how other states like you know, Arizona go, New Mexico go. It's a battle. Every one of these states is a battle. Yeah. Every battleground state is a battle for both campaigns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, issues related to voter suppression, particularly sensitive in Georgia. There have been a number of accusations during previous elections, 2018, and so I'm wondering. I know there was that hiccup with the pipe breaking at one of the polling stations. Have we seen any irregularities that are concerning?
You know, here's the thing, Emery, particularly for a record turnout. I mean, nearly 4 million Georgians voted early. In all, about 5 million Georgians will vote. Those we're in new territory here for the state of Georgia. By and large, the voting process seemed to go well. At the beginning, there were some very long lines as long as 10 hours when there was a stampede of early voters. But I got to tell you, like on Election Day, on Tuesday, uniformly, wait times were about 10 or 15 minutes. In the past, those long wait times were cited by critics as an example of voter suppression. You had a number of people, particularly in communities of color, who work in service industries. They work by the hour. To stand in line, every hour they're standing in line costs them money. And so many people could not afford to stand very long in those lines, and if the line was too long, they would just go home. They consider that one example of suppression. But you're right, this state has a dark history of those kinds of allegations. I've not heard as many of them this time around. I think the early voting, the encouragement by the state to vote early was heard. Now, are there individual complaints by people? Yes, there are. But I've not heard on a real scale that there have been a lot of complaints.
All right, Mark Strassman for us in Georgia. Mark, we appreciate it as always, my friend. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you guys soon.
Yep.